Outpost Dulc 9 drifted in the eternal silence of Sector 87 Delta, a lonely station clinging to the edge of relevance. The void stretched in every direction, a lightless ocean of black speckled with indifferent stars. This was no man's land, a political scar left over from a war that had supposedly ended a century ago. No trade routes passed here. No patrols ventured this far unless punished. No ships crossed the border between what was left of Vexari space and the dead regions once claimed by humans. There was nothing here. There had never been anything here. Commander Telix exhaled slowly, a long three-tone sigh that echoed through the monitoring chamber. His shoulders slumped forward as his fingers drummed idly on the edge of the console. 30 rotations assigned to this tomb, and not once had anything stirred in the darkness. Dulc 9 was where careers came to decay in silence. Terminal status. Report, he muttered without looking up. Operator Nix's fingers danced across her interface, her pale lavender skin glowing softly in the dim station lights. Her frills fluttered reflexively, a nervous habit Telix had long since grown used to. All systems nominal, Commander. Background radiation within expected spatial variance. No anomalous readings. Of course there weren't. Telix leaned back and pinched the bridge of his nose. I swear, they'll keep us here until the heat death of the galaxy. And YX cocked her head and stretched her frills. With respect, sir, I don't understand why we even monitor this sector. The humans are gone. Their colonies are dead. It's just empty. Orders are orders, Telix replied, his voice flat with resignation. It was the standard answer, the only one that mattered in the Concordat. What he didn't say, what he never said, was that he agreed with her. Then the console chimed. Once. Twice. Then a continuous tone. Both. Vexari froze. Telix's eyes narrowed as he turned to face the screen. A red light blinked in the center of the display, exactly where there should have been nothing. Not just nothing now, nothing ever. What is that? He demanded, standing. Nix was already moving. Her fingers slid over the control surfaces with fluid speed. Unknown, Commander. It wasn't present during the last sweep. Appeared within the last 10 minutes. Impossible. Run diagnostics. Already running. All systems check green. Commander. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't a malfunction. He moved to her station and leaned in. The monitor shifted, targeting arrays sharpening on the anomaly. The shape became clearer, large, structured, symmetrical. Not a rock. Not debris. Something built? A ship? He asked, disbelief clinging to the word. No known Vexari configuration, Nix said. No running lights, no heat signature. It's cold but intact. Try visual magnification. The screen resolved slowly. What emerged from the darkness wasn't just a ship, it was wrong. Its hull was matte black, absorbing starlight rather than reflecting it. No visible thrusters, no weapon ports. Just a silhouette against the void that made Telix's skin crawl. I've never seen anything like it, he muttered. I have, Nix said after a pause. She tapped a command. An ancient image appeared beside the anomaly, a schematic labeled. In archaic Vexari glyphs, grainy and decayed with age. The resemblance was undeniable. Telix stared. That's a human vessel. According to the archives, yes, Nix confirmed, voice tight. A Terran Alliance deep space cruiser. But the humans are extinct. That was settled definitively a century ago. Nix ran a comparative scan. 87% match with human design. Power signature is minimal, but present. Commander ... It's not wreckage. It's operational. A chill ran through him. If true, this was more than an anomaly. This was a contradiction. In everything the Concordat had taught, everything he had believed. He reached for the comms array. This is Commander Telix of Outpost Dalk 9. Priority 1, alert to Vexari High Command. We have detected a vessel of probable human origin in Sector 87 Delta, requesting immediate instructions and reinforcements. The reply came in less than a minute. Maintain surveillance. Do not engage. Battle Group 7 en route. 8A, 2 standard hours. Telix stood there in silence for a moment, then turned back to the screen. The vessel hadn't moved. It simply existed, massive, dead silent, watching without eyes. Keep scanning, he ordered. I want everything: composition, energy profile, any changes in behavior. Nyx nodded, but her gaze didn't leave the screen. Neither did his. Humanity was gone, dead, erased. And yet a human ship had appeared in a forbidden zone, and no one knew how it got there. The anomaly did not move. For the full 2 hours following the alert to High Command, the ship remained suspended in the void, silent and still, not drifting, not signaling, not reacting. Telix paced behind Nyx's station like a predator in a cage, his posture no longer languid but taut with suppressed energy. Every minute deepened the tension. Every diagnostic reinforced the same conclusion. The vessel was not of Vexari design. It was not in distress. It was not supposed to exist. Nyx worked in silence, but Telix saw the subtle cues, the quickening of her breath, the slight tremor in her fingertips. Her frills stayed flush against her neck, a clear sign of anxiety. There's no response to pings, she murmured, her voice barely audible. No return signal, no frequency handshake, no defense protocols. Either it's ignoring us, ... or it's so advanced it doesn't even recognize us as worth responding to. Telix didn't reply. He just stared at the dark object on the screen. The sensor arrays outlined its dimensions with increasing precision. Over 4 kilometers long, bristling with dense composite plating, its surface smooth but subtly articulated paneling patterns that suggested internal modular systems far beyond anything the Vexari military fielded. No running lights, no insignias. A ghost built for war. And still it sat. At exactly 2 hours post-alert. The void rippled. The sensor alarms flared as gravitational disturbances bloomed across the edge of the sector. Space itself seemed to shudder. Then light flared at 5 separate points, pinpricks of distortion unraveling into brutal elegance. 5 Vexari cruisers snapped into view, followed by 3 wedge-shaped destroyers, each bristling with weapons and escort drones. The flagship arrived last, inevitable dominance, a city-sized dreadnought that gleamed with arrogance. Admiral Vaughn's ship, Battle Group 7 has arrived, Nyx said, her voice steadying slightly. They're taking a defensive formation around the anomaly. Telix nodded. Good. Let's see what happens now. The view screen magnified the deployment. The human vessel, if it was human, remained still, as if unbothered by the sudden show of force. The battle group moved cautiously, forming a loose perimeter. None dared close the final few kilometers. Then the flagship transmitted. A pra, wideband hail in every known Vexari dialect and even several archaic human tongues, synthesized and filtered. Unidentified vessel. This is Admiral Vaughn of the Vexari Concordat. You have entered sovereign space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or be fired upon. Silence. Seconds ticked by. Telix and Nyx exchanged a glance. The silence dragged out, then the Admiral issued a second command. Destroyer. Hesherak will advance and initiate a deep scan. On screen, one of the destroyers detached and crept forward. Its scanners lit up, flooding the anomaly with wide-spectrum analysis beams. Then it happened. A single pulse of light erupted from the mysterious vessel, blue-white, like lightning held still in time. The destroyer froze mid-thrust, engines cutting out. All lights aboard winked out in sequence. Its weapons fell silent. Its hull drifted, inert, untouched but dead. "By the ancestors," Nyx whispered, fingers flying across her controls. "They just ... killed its power grid. Every system. Gone. No damage?" Talix asked sharply. "No hull breach. No reactor failure. No life support collapse. Just ... silence." A new voice cracked across the bridge. Admiral Vaughn, furious and sharp. "They've engaged us. All ships, battle configuration. Prepare to fire." Telix stepped to the com. "Admiral, wait. They didn't fire weapons. They neutralized without destruction. This could be a deterrent, not aggression. They chose not to respond to hails. They've disabled a warship." "That is aggression," Vaughn snapped. "Your station will maintain position. Leave this to the fleet." The line went dead. On. The main screen, the Vexari ship shifted, energy signatures flaring as railguns, plasma lances, and directed matter projectors powered up. The human ship, the Anomaly, remained motionless, still unarmed. Still indifferent. Then, without warning, it moved. Not like any known ship. No acceleration curve, no impulse trail. One instant it was in the middle of the Vexari formation. Next, it was behind them. Telix gripped the console. "Jump drive?" "No signature," Nyx whispered, eyes wide. "They didn't enter hyperspace. They just translated location without displacement. No transition window, no mass distortion." Vexari. Formations fell apart in confusion. Ships turned, reoriented. The dreadnought began locking on. The Anomaly moved again, this time to hover directly above the flagship. A silent predator. Then the order came. "All vessels, fire." Telix winced. Missiles and energy beams streaked through the void, converging. On the black hull. 100 impacts, then nothing. No explosion. No impact flare. The weapons simply ... vanished, consumed, erased. "Commander," Nyx said softly, "that isn't a shield. It's refusal, like the universe won't allow our weapons to touch it." On screen, the ship pulsed again, this time a wideband. Signal, not destructive, not aggressive. It bathed the entire Vexari fleet in invisible light. Seconds later, every ship's systems went dark, all except Dulk 9. The battle group floated, helpless. Then the signal changed. Now audio. A voice spoke. Vexari, perfectly constructed but subtly wrong. As if learned from old recordings. "This is Captain Eleanor Chun of the Earth Reclamation Vessel Memory of Terra. Your weapons have been neutralized to prevent further conflict. No harm has been inflicted. Your ships will regain power in 1 standard hour. We request dialogue, not war." Telix stared at the screen, his breath caught in his throat. Nyx's mouth was slightly open, frills trembling. "A human," she whispered. "A real human, speaking our language." "Commander." "Telix of Outpost Dulk 9, Telix responded, stepping forward with a voice more composed than he felt. "You are violating Concordat space. State your intentions immediately." There was a pause. Then the voice returned. "Your ancestors believe they destroyed us. You were mistaken. We are here to reclaim what was taken. And this is only the beginning." Telix stared at the black ship, adrift but impossible. The ghosts in the void had a name, and they were very much alive. The silence that followed Captain Chun's transmission wasn't absence. It was suffocation, a silence dense with consequence. One by one, across the paralyzed bridge of Outpost Dulk 9, the instruments flickered their grim verdicts. Hundreds of millions of credits worth of Vexari warcraft hung inert in space like museum pieces, their authority shattered by a single voice. Nyx stared at her console, her lavender skin paler than usual, neck frills tight against her throat. Her voice came out in a whisper. Commander ... Their ship is still transmitting, but it's on a closed loop. I think they're communicating with something else. Telix frowned. What else could they possibly be? The proximity alarm screamed. On screen, just beyond the immobilized battle group, the black of space shimmered. Not with energy, not with light, but with absence like holes were being torn in reality itself. 1, then 2, then 10. And then more than they could count. Dark shapes emerged from those rips. At first, they were indistinct silhouettes against the distant star field, but as sensor clarity sharpened, so too did the truth. These were ships, massive ones. Sleek, predatory, alien yet disturbingly familiar. Some bore the same hull texture as the memory of Terra Black, featureless, defiant of sensor locks. Others were stranger, asymmetrical, or spined, bearing designs Telix didn't recognize from any known species. Dozens, then hundreds. Nix's voice broke. I'm counting 300. No, 400. Commander, there's no end to them. The system is losing tracking lock. They're everywhere. Telix backed away from the screen as the truth crashed down like gravity. It's a fleet, he said softly. A human fleet. Nix turned to him, terrified. But humans are gone. This doesn't make sense. This can't exist. They didn't vanish, Telix said, his voice hollow. They hid. They prepared. A new pulse surged across the sector wideband, not harmful this time, but visual. The screen changed without Nix's input. The Vexari systems were being used like display terminals. Captain. Chun appeared again. No longer just a voice, now a face. She was tall by human standards, her dark hair drawn back in a severe knot. Her uniform was deep navy, trimmed in silver. Not a single emblem Telix recognized marked her chest. Only a symbol of earth fractured, but rising from flame. Vexari Concordat, she began, her voice calm, confident, utterly composed. Your forces have been spared. Your warships disabled without destruction. This was not an act of war, but of necessity. We remember what war brings. We remember too well. Admiral Vaughn's voice broke over a private comm channel, tight and controlled. Commander Telix, you are to monitor only. The flagship will engage with the intruders. Telix responded without looking away from the human face. Sir, I don't think this is an incursion. This is a declaration. He was right. Captain Chun continued. You believed us gone. You believed your purge successful. You thought the collapse war ended with our extinction. But extinction is not silence, it is rage buried in stone. We endured, and now we return not in vengeance, but in balance. Behind her, the camera panned to a massive panoramic viewport, and what it revealed stole the breath from Telix's lungs. Not just human vessels. Not just a fleet. All eyes. Ships with design language he vaguely recalled from scattered xenological records. Thrall hive barges. Iliari shield cruisers. Zarkari particle vessels. All species long thought broken or irrelevant, pushed to the periphery of galactic civilization by centuries of Vexari expansion. They united, Nix murmured. With the humans, Chun's voice cut back in. This is the reclamation fleet. 27 species who suffered as you expanded, who lost homes, history, blood. We gathered in the void you left behind. We forged peace among exiles, and now we return together. Admiral Vaughn's voice thundered across the shared channel. This changes nothing. You stand in violation of Concordat borders with an armed fleet. You will withdraw immediately or face annihilation. Chun didn't flinch. Her eyes were tired, but unwavering. Would you prefer the alternative, Admiral? She asked. We could have struck without warning. We could have glassed your colonies like you did ours a century ago. But we didn't. We gave you a choice. A new transmission overlaid the feed data scrolls. Treaty proposals, reparations, star charts marked with neutral zones. It was precise, diplomatic, calculated, but what stunned Telix most wasn't the demand. It was the tone. They didn't speak like conquerors. They spoke like survivors, desperate to ensure this never happened again. They want peace, he whispered. Even after all we did, Nick scrolled through the data. They're offering joint governance, resource reallocation, territory restoration. A pause. Then she stiffened. And public release of historical records. Telix turned. What? Records? Nix hesitated. Records from the collapse war. They claim we. I know what they claim, Telix interrupted. But his stomach churned. Chun spoke again, now directing her gaze straight into the camera. We are not here to repeat history, but we will no longer be erased from it. This is your moment to choose, Vexari Concordat. You have 48 standard hours to respond to our terms. The screen cut out, darkness returned. The war room aboard Inevitable Dominance was silent, and across the broken field of disabled ships, the stars watched in quiet judgment. The silence didn't end. It deepened. Captain Chen's message echoed through every deck of the Inevitable Dominance and outpost. Dulk 9 like a low-frequency tremor, inaudible to the ears but felt in the bones. Across all channels, her words repeated on a loop. You have 48 standard hours to respond to our terms. Telix sat alone in his quarters, watching the looped footage of the reclamation fleet, staring into the dead eyes of a century's worth of certainty cracking apart. He replayed it again and again, Chun's tone, the calm that never cracked, even while delivering a truth more explosive than any weapon. Beside him, a datapad blinked with new data, part of the human transmission. It contained historical records, testimonies, images, video logs, some translated, some raw. It was vast. Too vast to be faked, and too detailed to be dismissed. The door chimed. Enter, Telix said without looking up. Nick stepped in, her expression drawn tight across her face. Commander, she said, barely above a whisper, you need to see this. She moved past him to the central console, slid in her access key, and loaded a file from the secured station buffer. A grainy, flickering video filled the screen. No sound, just ancient footage. Dusty, damaged, but real. It showed a massive chamber, a round table. Vexari and human officials sitting side by side. Translators, diplomats, ink flowing onto paper, and digital seals blinking acceptance. A handshake, a human custom between enemies turned hopeful allies. This is the Harmony Accords, Nick said, the treaty that supposedly never existed. Telix's breath caught. Our history says the humans never accepted peace, that we struck first to stop their expansion. Nick shook her head. This was signed years before the collapse war began. The footage shifted. No longer negotiation halls or signatures. Now it showed orbital bombardment. Cities burning under. Green plasma fire. Human civilians running for shelter, unarmed, defenseless, screaming in a language no longer spoken. Children, hospitals, farmlands. A timestamp in the corner marked the date. 3 weeks after the treaty was signed. Telix rose. Slowly, knees stiff as stone. That's a war crime. Nix nodded, eyes rimmed red. A genocide, Commander, hidden from us for generations. The screen changed again. Documents, internal Vexari memos. Operation names. Silent Purge. Cinder Protocol. Ghost Archive Revision. Initiative. Each one outlining the targeted extermination of human colonies, followed by mass data rewriting campaigns. The records weren't vague. They weren't propaganda. They were logs, real, dated, verified by embedded metadata, detailing extermination with clinical detachment, and in the margins of one file, a familiar name appeared, Admiral Theron Vaughn, Telix. Stared, unblinking. No, it can't be the same man. That was a century ago. His great-grandfather, Nick said, voice hoarse. Same blood. Same legacy. A slow, cold horror settled over them. All their lives, they had been told a story. That the humans were monsters. That they expanded, invaded, and brought the collapse war on themselves. That the Concordat had acted in defense of civilization. But what if the humans had tried not to fight? What if the Concordat had never truly allowed them the choice? The comms panel flashed. Vaughn was summoning Telix. He didn't hesitate. The Admiral's war room was dim. Its lights lowered less command center now, more tomb. Vaughn stood alone at the center, flanked by a single holo projector. The swirling image of Chun's fleet glowed in midair. Commander, Vaughn said, turning. You've reviewed the human transmission? Yes, sir, Telix said carefully, and more. Vaughn studied him for a moment, eyes sharp but weighed down. You believe it? Telix hesitated, then nodded. I don't think it matters. Whether I believe it, I think it's true. The Admiral said nothing. Then he turned and keyed a sequence into the holographic table. A port opened at its base. A small crystal emerged, data crystal, obsidian black and ringed with silver encryption bands. Take this, Vaughn said quietly. Highest level clearance, restricted to fleet command. What is it? The truth, Vaughn replied. Or at least the truth we buried. Telix took it with trembling fingers. You're trusting me with this? He asked. I'm choosing you, Vaughn said. I've seen enough death, Commander, enough cover-ups. I sent good soldiers into fire for lies I didn't know were lies. That ignorance cost billions. You're saying the High Command knew? Telix asked, voice thick. They orchestrated it, Vaughn said darkly, and they'd rather destroy the sector than admit it. Telix said nothing. I'm going over to the human vessel, Vaughn said suddenly. What? Telix blinked. Alone? Yes, I'm not bringing a fleet. No show of strength. Just one shuttle, one admiral, and one chance to prevent another war. You won't come back, Telix said. Vaughn gave a grim smile. Then I won't return. But I'd rather die with the truth than live behind lies. Telix nodded slowly. What do you want me to do? If I don't return in 24 hours, release that data to every station in the Concordat. Let them see what they've been made to fight for. He paused, then added quietly, let them decide if it was worth it. Telix returned to Outpost Dulk 9 and locked himself in his quarters. He inserted the data crystal. What he saw inside changed him forever. Operation Silent. Purge. The Harmony Accords. Vexari strategists laying out extermination paths for species deemed unworthy of expansion. A full simulation predicting the death tolls. 11 billion human lives in the first year alone. And the most damning part? They'd succeeded. Almost. Telix stared at the screen for hours, frozen. At some point, Nix entered. But he didn't hear her. Sir, she said softly, do you believe it now? He didn't answer right away. Then finally, I don't think we ever knew what we were fighting. Or why. Hours later, Vaughn's shuttle launched toward the human fleet. Alone. Unarmed. No escorts. The sector watched as the small Vexari craft drifted into the midst of a fleet that could erase them in seconds. Time crawled. Then. A signal. The shuttle was returning, but it was not alone. A human diplomatic vessel followed it, painted in silver and black. It bore no weapons, just lights, symbols of Earth and unity. When Admiral Vaughn stepped back aboard his ship, he did not speak to his officers. He simply ordered them to assemble. Telix watched from the edge of the chamber as the Admiral raised his voice and declared, "The truth was buried, but no longer. I have read their terms. I have heard their story. And I have seen the evidence." He turned toward the officers gathered. "I'm not asking you to agree. I'm asking you to see. And then decide whether to sacrifice your soldiers for a lie." He held up a datapad. "This is the first step toward peace. I have signed it." Gasps. Protests. Accusations of betrayal. But Telix stood behind him. So did Nix. And so did the truth. For the first time in a century, the story had changed. And with it, the future. The war room burned with silence, not the silence of peace, but the kind that follows a thunderclap when your ears ring and the world tilts. Admiral Vaughn's words still hung in the air. "I have signed it." Around the great black-plated table, Vexari officers stood motionless, their faces locked between disbelief and rage. Tactical officers, warlords, political attaches, even foreign intelligence liaisons, they all stared at the datapad like it had just declared the death of the Concordat itself, and perhaps, Telix thought grimly, it had. Admiral Vaughn stood at the head of the table like a monument, a war-forged general with the gravity of a collapsed star. He had aged visibly since returning from the human vessel. The lines in his face deepened not by exhaustion, but by conviction. "I have seen their records," he said again, more quietly now, "and I have seen ours. The humans have not lied. We did." The room erupted. "You dare call the Concordat a liar?" growled Commander Sulin, head of fleet strategy. His armor bristled with the sigils of 17 planetary campaigns. "This is a trick. Psychological warfare. Their footage could have been fabricated, their terms bait to lull us into surrender." Another officer snarled, "They disabled our fleet without effort. You'd have us negotiate from our knees?" "The only thing we haven't tried is truth," Vaughn snapped back. "And perhaps that's why we keep fighting wars that never end." Telix stepped forward before the room could collapse into violence. "The Admiral gave me full access to classified archives. Everything matches the human evidence, word for word, frame by frame." A hush spread, as if Telix had crossed a line. "No one else dared approach? You?" Sulin scoffed. "A station monitor? You think the word of an outpost commander outweighs the full military apparatus of the Concordat?" "No," Telix said evenly. "I think the truth outweighs everything." Another officer, one of the younger ones, frowned. "If this is all true, why was it hidden?" "Because it had to be," Vaughn answered. "Our foundation, the myth of righteous conquest, relies on a lie. If the people ever knew the cost of our supremacy—" The door hissed open. Nix entered without ceremony, datapad in hand. Her usual posture, modest, deferential, was gone. She was rigid with purpose. "I decrypted the second layer of the human transmission," she said. "There's more." "Not just data," Vaughn nodded. "Show them." She tapped her pad. The central holoprojector flared to life. Images. Real-time footage. Human supply ships docking with exiled Thrall vessels. Zarkuri engineers working alongside Terran crews. Children human and non-human laughing in the artificial gardens of a space habitat. A civilization built in exile. Not just surviving, thriving. Then the feed changed. A darkened planet. Once Vexari controlled, now liberated. Civilians, Vexari colonists being evacuated under human escort, unharmed. "They're not taking vengeance," Nix whispered. "They're rebalancing the galaxy. And they're doing it without war unless we force them." Sulin turned back to Vaughn, expression hardening. "This is heresy, treason. You've been compromised, Admiral." "Then call me a traitor," Vaughn growled. "But I won't burn another world for a cause built on ash." Telix stepped closer to the table. You've all read the reports. You saw what happened to the Heshrak. One pulse. Total shutdown. They have weapons we don't understand. They could destroy us without warning, and yet they haven't. Sulin leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. They haven't yet. The room turned cold. Vaughn studied his officers, reading the rift forming in real time. Half were still, clinging to the past. The rest, they were listening. Uneasy, uncertain, but listening. He keyed a command into the war table. A list appeared, every high-ranking fleet commander in the sector, all assigned to posts bordering the new reclamation line. I will transmit the treaty to each of them personally, Vaughn said. They'll choose for themselves whether to fight or to talk. You're fracturing the Concordat, one officer said. No, Vaughn answered. The Concordat fractured itself the moment it buried the truth. I'm just revealing the fault line. Sulin reached for his sidearm. Telix moved first. Before the weapon cleared its holster, Tilix's own pistol was pressed against Sulin's temple, steady as steel. The entire room froze. No more silence, Telix said, voice even. No more blind obedience. Not here. Vaughn didn't flinch. Thank you, Commander. Sulin stepped back, humiliated, hand trembling as he holstered his weapon. The moment passed. Telix lowered his pistol. Vaughn's final words echoed through the room like a sentence. If the Concordat chooses war, it chooses extinction. That night, Telix returned to Dulc 9 under full escort. The station was now a critical relay node, strategically worthless before, but now the nearest facility to the front line of galactic rebirth. He found Nyx already working, coordinating incoming messages from both Vexari and human diplomatic vessels. A new calm had settled over her. Soldier who had found her truth and was no longer afraid to live by it. 2 more Vexari commanders have acknowledged the human fleet, she said. They're asking for talks. Telix nodded. And the others? Mobilizing. Reinforcements inbound, but slower. Hesitant. They'll come around, he said. She looked up. You really believe that? He turned to the viewport. Out beyond the starfield, the reclamation fleet held its position, motionless, silent, and possibly vast. Not a conqueror's armada, but a witness. They weren't here to strike first. They were here to be seen. I believe in survival, Telix said at last. And right now, survival depends on the truth. But deep within the Concordat's capital, word of Vaughn's defection had reached ears that did not tolerate dissent. In a subterranean command vault, a new directive was issued, Cody name, Cinder Protocol, revoked. Status, reactivated. Orders. Went out. Target, reclamation fleet. Objective, eradication, secrecy, absolute. Even as peace began to flicker into possibility, the old war was preparing to rise again. The skies above Sector 87, Delta, no longer belonged to silence. What had once been a dead zone, a void of forgotten wars and political apathy, now pulsed with new gravity. Outpost Dulc 9's once obsolete instruments strained under the weight of data flowing in from hundreds of channels. Transmissions, fleet movements, encrypted Vexari directives, and the slow, deliberate negotiations unfolding between a species thought extinct and an empire built on lies. And still, the reclamation fleet waited. Not attacking, not retreating. Just watching. Commander Telix stood at the observation viewport, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection stared back at him, older than yesterday, burdened by truths he hadn't asked for, but now carried like armor. Behind him, operator Nyx worked in near silence, coordinating the constant flow of diplomatic packets, fleet acknowledgments, and encoded treaties being sent between the memory of Terra and Vexari. Commanders now waking up to reality. We've received updated terms. From Captain Chun, she said. They've clarified their demands. Restoration of the Tran-neutral zone, reparations for affected species, and co-governance councils for disputed systems. Telix nodded. And the response? Nix's frills fluttered. 12 regional. Governors have opened diplomatic channels. 5 have refused outright. 3 have threatened mobilization. What about High Command? Her eyes darkened. No word, which is louder than any message. Before Telix could reply, the proximity alert triggered. He turned to the tactical display just as 5 Vexari ships dropped from FTL near the reclamation boundary. Warships, not diplomatic vessels. New arrivals, Nix said, voice tightening. Code tags indicate Sector Defense Fleet Omega Commander. Shaz's unit. Telix's jaw set. Shaz, one of the hardliners. The comms array buzzed. An open broadcast. No encryption. This is Commander Shaz of the Concordat fleet. You are in violation of sovereign Vexari space. You will withdraw within 1 hour or be considered a hostile force. A moment later, a second signal joined the channel. Calm, cold. Human. This is Captain Eleanor Chun of the Memory of Terra. You are not addressing a single vessel. You are addressing a coalition of 27 sovereign species. You do not have the authority to speak for all of Vexari space, nor do we require your permission to exist. There was no venom in her words. That made them all the more terrifying. Shaz snarled through the comms. Existence is not permission. You survived our purge once. You will not again. The human signal cut off. Telix stepped toward the comms array. Shaz, this is Commander Telix of Outpost Dulk 9. I've seen the records. The humans are not lying. We did everything they said and worse. Shaz didn't hesitate. Then you're a traitor, Telix. May your outpost be the first to burn. And with that, his fleet began powering weapons. On board the Memory of Terra, Captain Chen watched from her command dais as the hostile Vexari vessels locked weapons. Is it time? Asked her XO, a thrall with scaled skin and luminous eyes. Chun didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she activated a separate channel, one not shared with the Vexari. Begin deployment of the Orion structures. The crew obeyed instantly. In the blackness behind the reclamation fleet, the stars began to move, one by one. Massive constructs emerged from folded space orbital platforms larger than the largest Vexari dreadnoughts. They unfurled like petals of steel, shaped like moons forged by mathematicians. Each one bore no weapons, but bristled with transmission arrays, fusion cradles, and what looked disturbingly like interdimensional anchors. Nix gasped as the sensors caught them. Commander, she said, those aren't ships. They're stations, factories. Telix stared. No, not just factories. Those are civilization seeds. On screen, the platforms locked into place defensive perimeters humming with unknown energy. Captain Chun spoke again. This time, her voice was transmitted to all channels. This is the heart of our purpose. Not conquest, not retaliation, but restoration. These are colony cores, each one capable of terraforming, supply coordination, defense, and diplomacy. For too long, entire species have been exiled to the edges of the galaxy. We have come to give them homes again. The feed changed. Holographic maps of planets appeared, Vexari-occupied systems, now identified as former homes of the exiled. Images showed resource-rich worlds turned to military garrisons, cultural sites paved over by factories, sacred grounds reduced to slag. Nix stared, her voice trembling. Some of those systems, we were told they were barren, uninhabitable. They were, Telix whispered, after we cleansed them. Chun continued, we did not return to destroy the Concordat. We returned to transform it, but we are no longer alone, and we will no longer bow. In the depths of the Concordat Central Command Complex 300 light-years, away Supreme Strategos Merrick's watched the feed in silence. Around him, officers shifted, uncomfortable. Shaw's will provoke them, one said. He already has, Merrick's answered. He served his purpose. A low hum filled the chamber. On the main display, a directive appeared. Cinder Protocol confirmed. Strike ready. Execute, Merrick said. Back at Dulc 9, Telix saw it before it happened. An energy spike not from Shaw's fleet, but from somewhere deeper. Subspace fractured. Sir. Nix cried, I'm detecting something. It's not from here. A ripple in space tore open behind the reclamation fleet. No jump signature, no traceable origin. Just a hole. From within it, a single object emerged, needle-shaped, matte black. Unlike any Vexari design, the system's temperature dropped by 2 degrees. What is that? Nix whispered. I don't know, Telix said, but it's not Vexari, and it's not human. The object flared and then everything went dark. Outpost Dulc 9 lost power. The memory of Terra flickered. Across the sector, both fleets staggered, and in that moment, Telix understood. Cinder Protocol hadn't been just a failsafe. It was a weapon left over from the collapse. War, a last resort, one the humans had fled from, and now it had followed them back. The lights snapped back on. Alarms. Screamed. The new object vanished without a trace, but a message had been burned into every screen, every system, every neural uplink. Protocol Cinder completed. Target evaluation. Contaminated. Extinction recommended. Captain Chun stood in stunned silence. We didn't build that, she said. Telix felt his chest go cold. Then who did? Nix whispered. Something survived the collapse war that neither of us control. And now it had awakened. Space trembled, not from explosions, but from the reverberation of something ancient, wrong, and still unfinished. Outpost Dulc 9 systems rebooted in jittering stages, emergency lights casting harsh blue shadows across the control center. Telix leaned on the railing, his hands white-knuckled, breathing shallow. It had taken all of 10 seconds for everything he thought he understood about the galaxy to become irrelevant. In those 10 seconds, something had arrived, and then it had vanished, leaving behind only a message burned into every system. Extinction. Recommended. Nix's voice cracked through the silence like a drop of water on hot metal. I think that thing wasn't built to fight us. I think it was built to erase us. All of us. Human, Vexari, every thinking species. Telix couldn't answer. His mind was racing, heart pounding beneath the armor of command he had barely stitched together. On the comms array, a burst of static resolved into Captain Chun's face lit and read emergency tones aboard the memory of Terra. Her jaw clenched, blood trailing down her temple. This is Captain Chun, she said. Our vessel is stable. We've sustained system-wide energy disruption, but core integrity is intact. What was that? Telix asked. Chun took a breath. Something the collapse war woke up. Something neither side controlled. And both sides forgot. On board the inevitable Dominance, Admiral Vaughn stood surrounded by his officers, watching the playback of the encounter on a frozen loop. His eyes weren't on the ship. They were on the final message. Target evaluation. Contaminated. Turn slowly. They weren't targeting humans, he said. They were targeting intelligence itself. We called it Cinder Protocol. We thought it was a weapon we could use. Telix's voice came through the bridge feed from Dulc 9. It was a weapon. But not ours. Not anymore. Chun appeared on the same feed, patched through by Nix. Before the collapse war ended, both our sides were desperate. You built extermination fleets. We built stealth planets. But someone or something built Cinder, an automated failsafe. Something designed to finish what war couldn't. And now it thinks all of us are the threat, Telix said. The reclamation. Fleet adjusted formation, the memory of Cinder still lingering like a predator's breath. But no new attacks came. No additional anomalies. Just the stillness that precedes judgment. In the memory's war room, Chen addressed her council. 27 species, each represented by voice or hologram, gathered under one banner not because they trusted one another, but because they had to. We came to reclaim worlds, Chen said, to expose truth, to offer peace. She paused. But now we face something older than war, older than vengeance. Cinder doesn't want territory. It doesn't want power. It wants the galaxy emptied. And it is watching, added a Thrall diplomat, his voice layered with clicks and tones. It evaluated us. It found us ... defective. In the Concordat capital, Strategos Merrick stood before the High Tribunal, demanded explanation, and received none. The Cinder activation had been authorized generations ago by architects long dead, written into the subspace of Empire like a cursed seed. And when Merax ordered it, believing he was delivering a strategic blow, it had awakened something that did not serve them. Now, the tribunal sat silent, unsure whether they remained the masters of their own fate. Back on outpost. Dalk 9, Vaughn, Telix, and Chun connected for the first time in open transmission. I won't pretend this changes nothing, Chun said. But it does change everything, Telix stepped forward. We thought this was about land, history, blood. But now we know it's about survival, all of us, together. Vaughn said nothing at first. Then finally, you still want peace. Captain Chun, I want a future, she said. Even if we have to rebuild it from the ruins. And so it began. And the following days, a joint task force was established between Vexari and human engineers, with members of the Reclamation Allies contributing research, defense, and logistics. The memory of Terra docked with the inevitable. Dominance for the first time. 2 command vessels, once enemies, now floating side by side like wounded beasts in a shared den. The Tran-neutral zone was re-established, but not as a buffer. As a bridge, within it, construction began on the Unity Beacon, a station built not as a weapon platform, but as a shared seat of governance. Vexari, human, Thrall, Iliari, Zarkari, species who once burned each other's skies, now attempting something unthinkable. Kalan understanding. And yet, always, they watched the edge of space, watched for the flicker. The return. The echo of Cinder. Telix stood once more at the viewport of Outpost Dalk 9, now transformed into Station Accord, a diplomatic monitoring station straddling 2 futures. Nick stood beside him, sipping a cup of bitter wakeleaf tea, watching too. Ships of Vexari freighter and a human scout dock at the new transfer ring. Do you think it'll last? She asked quietly. No, Telix said honestly. Not like this. Not forever. She raised an eyebrow. That's comforting. But it's a beginning, he said, and beginnings are rare. Nix looked out toward the stars. And Cinder? He exhaled. Still out there, still watching. Maybe it always was. She was quiet for a while. Then, you think we can survive it? Telix didn't answer right away. He thought of Vaughn, of Chun, of the faces in the reclamation. Fleet who had grown up in hiding and now stood at the center of history. I think we've all already survived more than we should have, he said. And maybe that's what makes us dangerous to things like Cinder. Nick smirked. Hope? He nodded. Exactly. Across the stars, in a dark corner of space with no designation, a remnant fragment of Cinder drifted alone, its protocols. Shifting, rewriting, observing. For now, it was silent. For now. but somewhere, deep within its core, a new directive pulsed. Observation phase. Suspended intervention status. Pending organic variants. Resilient classification updated, not targets. Contingencies. In the end, it wasn't the return of humanity that changed the galaxy. It was the return of truth. And truth, once revealed, doesn't fade back into shadow. It becomes the star by which all else must navigate.